The Book of Enoch talks about 10 different levels of heaven. Enoch was guided by an archangel who showed him what each level contained. Some of the things he saw in the higher heavens were so powerful that they made him fall down in fear. In this video, I'll explain each level of heaven described in the Book of Enoch. But before we start, I want to make one thing clear. My goal is to lead you closer to the Most High. I don't want anyone to worship angels or any other being. The Book of 2 Enoch begins by describing how there was a wise and skilled man whom God deeply loved. God took this man, Enoch, and allowed him to see the highest realms of heaven, the most glorious and unimaginable parts of God's eternal kingdom. Enoch witnessed the shining light, countless angels, and the majestic throne of God himself. This verse shows that Enoch was chosen by God to experience heaven while still alive, which is a rare honor. In fact, Enoch is one of only 2 people in history, along with the prophet Elijah, who were taken to heaven without dying. As we go further into the Book of Enoch, he describes his encounter with the angels who took him to heaven. Enoch explains that he first saw them in a dream, entering his room, but when he opened his eyes, they were really standing there. And I lay on my bed sleeping, and while I slept, a great distress entered my heart. I began to weep in my dream, but I didn't understand why I felt this way or what was happening to me. Then suddenly 2 huge men appeared to me, the like of which I had never seen on earth. Their faces were like the shining sun. Their eyes were like burning lamps, and flames came from their mouths. Their clothes glimmered with many colors that seemed to sing as they moved. Their wings sparkled brighter than gold, and their hands were whiter than snow. They stood beside my bed and called me by my name. I woke up and saw them standing there in front of me, and I was filled with fear. I bowed down before them, trembling, and my face changed because of my fear. But the 2 men spoke gently and said, "Be brave, Enoch. Do not be afraid. The eternal God has sent us to you, and today you will rise with us into heaven." The first heaven lies directly above the firmament, which the Bible describes as the dome that covers the earth. This concept of the firmament is seen in many ancient cultures. Enoch says he saw a vast body of water, far greater than any ocean on earth. The Bible also mentions these waters above the firmament. Genesis 1:7 says, "And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament." And it was so, Enoch writes, "And they took me up onto their wings and carried me up to the first heaven and placed me on the clouds. And behold, they were moving. And there I perceived the air higher up and higher still. I saw the ether, and they placed me on the first heaven, and they showed me a vast ocean, much bigger than the earthly ocean. In this heaven, he also saw a group of mysterious elders and 200 angels responsible for governing the stars. The second heaven that Enoch saw was a place filled with darkness, deeper than anything on earth. It seemed like a prison for fallen angels, also called the Watchers. These beings were held there, awaiting judgment. Enoch asked one of the angels with him why these beings were suffering and being punished. The angel replied, "These are those who turned away from the Lord, who did not obey the Lord's commandments, but of their own will plotted together and turned away with their prince." The third heaven that Enoch visited was a place filled with beauty and peace, a paradise made for those who live righteous lives. This heaven is meant as a reward for people who do good deeds and remain faithful. Yet there is also another part of the same heaven that feels more like a place of suffering, almost like hell. Let's look more closely at what this place is like and who the righteous people really are. In Enoch's vision, he was taken up into the third heaven. There he saw a paradise that was beyond imagination, filled with trees full of blossoms and fruit that gave off a sweet fragrance. The tree of life stood in the center, glowing with beauty and light like fire. It was unlike anything else in creation. Every kind of fruit and tree grew there, and its roots connected paradise to the world below. From this garden flowed 2 main rivers, one producing honey and milk, the other flowing with oil and wine. Enoch was amazed by its beauty, and the angels told him that this paradise was made for the righteous. The righteous, Enoch learned, are those who suffer in life yet remain pure in heart. They avoid injustice, show mercy, feed the hungry, clothe the poor, help the weak and orphaned, and walk faithfully before God. They live without pride or corruption, worshiping only the Creator. For such people, this paradise was prepared as an everlasting inheritance. But when Enoch was taken to the northern part of the third heaven, he saw something completely different, a dark and terrifying region filled with torment. Even though it was still part of the same heaven, it had no light. Strange black flames burned there endlessly. Enoch described it as a place of punishment that seemed very similar to hell. He even saw a river of fire, which reminded him of the lake of fire mentioned elsewhere in sacred writings. The angels explained that this place was made for those who refused to honor God. It was the eternal home of people who practiced evil on earth, such as witchcraft, dark magic, and dealings with spirits. These were people who hurt others for gain, lied, stole, killed, and refused to help the poor when they could. They worshipped lifeless idols instead of their true creator. After this, Enoch was taken to the fourth heaven. This is where the movements of the sun and moon were revealed to him. It is described as the place that holds the solar and lunar paths. Verse 11 says, "And those men took me, and they carried me up to the fourth heaven, and they showed me there all the movements and sequences, and all the rays of solar and lunar light. And I measured their movements, and I compared their light. And I saw that the sun has a light 7 times greater than the moon. And I saw his circle and his wheels on which he always goes, going past always like the wind, with quite marvelous speed. And his coming and his return give him no rest, day and night. And 4 great stars, each star having 1,000 stars under it, on the right-hand side of the sun's chariot, and 4 on the left-hand side, each one having 1,000 stars under it. Altogether 8,000, going with the sun perpetually. And 150,000 angels accompany him in the daytime, and at night 1,000. And 100 angels go in front of the sun's chariot, 6 winged and flaming fire, and the sun blazes up and sets the 100 angels on fire. This detailed description shows that the fourth heaven is a realm of cosmic order, where the great heavenly lights are managed by angelic forces. Then Enoch was taken to the fifth heaven, where he saw the Watchers, also called the Grigori. These were angels who once looked like humans, but were far greater in size and power. They are the ones who descended to earth, took human wives, and gave birth to the Nephilim, giant beings that filled the earth before the great flood. The Watchers were sorrowful in this place, as they were cut off from God and awaiting judgment for their rebellion. Afterward, Enoch was taken to the sixth heaven, which contained 7 different groups of angels. These beings were so radiant that they shone brighter than the sun itself. According to 2 Enoch 19, these groups carefully studied and directed the workings of the universe. They observed the movements of stars, the paths of the sun and moon, and the well-being of creation. Whenever they witnessed wrongdoing or imbalance, they set things in order according to God's commands. Their voices sang sweetly in harmony, offering continuous praise to the Lord. These were not ordinary angels, but the mighty archangels who ruled over the others. Next, Enoch reached the seventh heaven, which filled him with intense fear. He saw armies of fiery archangels, countless ranks of celestial beings, and powerful forces unlike anything human eyes could imagine. The seventh heaven contained the dominions, authorities, cherubim, seraphim, and countless shining thrones. Enoch trembled at the sight, overwhelmed by the glory and magnitude of God's heavenly host. At this point, the 2 angels who had brought him this far left him, and Enoch fell on his face in fear. Then God sent one of his greatest messengers, the archangel Gabriel, to guide Enoch through the remaining heavens. Enoch then saw the 8th heaven, briefly described in 2 Enoch 21 as, "I saw the 8th heaven, which is called in the Hebrew language Muzaloth, the changer of the seasons, of dry and of wet, and the 12 zodiacs, which are above the 7th heaven. This heaven was where the cycles of time, seasons, and celestial patterns were controlled. Above it was the 9th heaven, called Kuchavim in Hebrew, where the heavenly houses of the 12 constellations were located. These 2 heavens represented the divine management of time, order, and the movements of the stars. Finally, Enoch reached the 10th heaven, the highest of all, where God himself resides. Enoch describes the face of God as being like iron glowing with heat, radiating sparks of divine fire. He says the sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying beyond words. Around the throne, armies of cherubim and seraphim sang unending songs of praise. God, seeing Enoch's fear, commanded the archangel Michael to remove Enoch's earthly clothing and anoint him with a radiant oil of light. When Enoch looked at himself, he saw that his form had changed. He now shone like the angels and stood among them as one of their kind. Thus Enoch was shown the full structure of heaven, from the lowest to the highest, witnessing the order, justice, and glory of God's creation.
For more contents like this, please subscribe to my channel so you can't miss my content.